So we are going to now discuss about methemoglobinemia. Okay, methemoglobinemia. It is a form. This methemoglobin is a form of hemoglobin that has been oxidized, changing its iron configuration from ferrous to ferric state. Unlike normal hemoglobin, this methemoglobin cannot reversibly bind oxygen and thus cannot deliver oxygen to tissue. So methemoglobinemia can be congenital or acquired. Okay, congenital or acquired. So majority of people with congenital methemoglobinemia are asymptomatic except for cyanosis, but some forms may have serious morbidity. While acquired methemoglobinemia can be severe or even fatal depending on the proportion of methemoglobin. So I have already told you the pathophysiology. Ferrous state, which is in normal hemoglobin and which allows binding of oxygen in the lungs and its release to the tissue, but in methemoglobin there is ferric state, Fe3+. Okay, oxidation differs from oxygenation in that it changes the redox state of hem, causes removal of electron, whereas oxygenation involves reversible binding of oxygen without redox change. The ferric hems of methemoglobin bind oxygen irreversibly. The ferric hem in the hemoglobin tetramer also causes the remaining normal ferrous hems to have increased oxygen affinity. This produces a left shift. Okay, left shift of hemoglobin dissociation curve and in turn further decreases oxygen delivery to the tissue. So I think you have now understood the pathophysiology, why it causes less delivery of oxygen to tissue because of the left shift. Okay, so consequences of methemoglobin depend on whether it is acutely increased or it is chronically increased. Infant and children with chronically increased methemoglobin levels and associated functional anemia can develop compensatory erythrocytosis. And are asymptomatic except for cyanosis. However, some congenital forms of methemoglobinemia are associated with severe developmental abnormalities and other non-erythroid pathology. But people with acute toxic methemoglobinemia can be severely ill and can die from severe hypoxia despite administration of supplemental oxygen. Okay. So formation of methemoglobin and conversion back to normal ferrous state occurs at low levels during normal RBC metabolism. Normally the formation and reduction of methemoglobin are balanced and the steady state level of methemoglobin is approximately 1% of total hemoglobin. So auto-oxidation converts a small portion of the available hemoglobin to methemoglobin per hour. Okay. Reactions with endogenous free radicals and compounds including hydrogen peroxide, nitrous oxide and hydroxyl radical also generate methemoglobin. Okay, methemoglobin levels are kept low by RBC enzyme cytochrome B5 reductase. Cytochrome B5 reductase, which reduces heme in hemoglobin, converting back to the ferrous state. Okay, ferric to ferrous state. So the only physiologically important pathway for hemoglobin reduction is through cytochrome B5 reductase pathway, previously called methemoglobin reductase. Okay, this enzyme was previously called methemoglobin reductase. Okay. An alternate pathway for methemoglobin reduction, which is not physiologically active, uses NADPH methemoglobin reductase. In this pathway, electrons are derived from NADPH, that is generated by G6PD in hexose monophosphate sand. However, there is normally no electron acceptor present in RBC to interact with NADPH. As a result, the pathway is only activated by extrinsic electron acceptors. such as methylene blue and riboflavin. This is the mechanism by which methylene blue therapy reverses methemoglobin anemia in severely affected individuals. The requirement of G6PD for generating NADPH explains why methylene blue therapy is ineffective in individuals with G6PD deficiency. Okay, so do you understand why methylene blue therapy is ineffective in individuals with G6PD deficiency? Because the requirement of G6PD for generating NADPH. Okay, because for generation of NADPH, G6PD is required. Methylene blue should be avoided in individuals with G6PD deficiency because it can also act as oxidant and cause severe hemolysis. Therefore, ascorbic acid should be used instead. Since methylene blue and riboflavin are not normally present in RBC, this source of electron transfer is not significant under normal conditions. Okay, and NADPH methemoglobin reductase deficiency does not cause congenital methemoglobinemia. So other compounds that can also promote reduction of methemoglobin include electron donors such as ascorbic acid, reduced glutathione, riboflavin, tetrahydropterin, cysteamine. Okay, clinically significant methemoglobinemia occurs when there is imbalance between processes, increased production of methemoglobin or decreased reduction, and acquired causes of methemoglobinemia are more common than congenital causes. In some cases, an underlying genetic predisposition to methemoglobin formation can greatly exacerbate methemoglobinemia after an exposure to oxidants. So cyanosis, how cyanosis occurs? Because cyanosis is a common feature of acute or toxic methemoglobinemia and may or may not be present in congenital methemoglobinemia. Cyanosis is not specific for methemoglobinemia. It can be caused by high levels of deoxygenated hemoglobin. You already know, greater than 5 gram per deciliter, or sulfhemoglobin above approximately 0.5 gram per deciliter, or methemoglobin above approximately. So it is not specific for methemoglobinemia. Any form of hemoglobin other than normal hemoglobin form can cause cyanosis if this crosses this level of thresholds. Okay, so in methemoglobinemia, the development of cyanosis correlates with the total amount of methemoglobin, not percentage. Total methemoglobin greater than 1.5 usually causes cyanosis. An individual with total hemoglobin 10 who has 10% methemoglobinemia will have total methemoglobin 1 and will likely not be cyanotic. But an individual with hemoglobin 18 and who has 10% hemoglobin will have total methemoglobinemia 1.8 and will likely be cyanotic. Okay, so do you understand? So we don't see percentage, we go for actual value of what is the actual value of absolute value of methemoglobin. So I stated another way, for the same percentage of methemoglobin, erythrocytosis will accentuate cyanosis, and anemia can mask cyanosis. Individuals with erythrocytosis will develop cyanosis at lower percentage of methemoglobin, whereas individuals with anemia will develop cyanosis at a higher percentage of methemoglobin. I am just reiterating what I have already told you. Okay. However, anemic individuals have reduced oxygen carrying capacity at baseline. This is why some individuals with acquired methemoglobin anemia in the setting of baseline anemia can be quite ill despite lack of cyanosis. And appearance of cyanosis can also be affected by skin pigmentation and dermal thickness, which affect the visibility of superficial dermal capillaries. Okay. So these are all pathophysiology that I have discussed here. Okay. So now I am discussing how to detect methemoglobin or measure methemoglobin. So there are misconceptions common in practical aspect of detecting methemoglobin. These are related to unusual behavior of methemoglobin in various tests and the evolution of technologies used for arterial blood gas analysis and pulse oximetry. Okay, so blood gas analyzers, vast majority of it are able to detect methemoglobin by its absorbance spectrum at 631 nanometer. Okay. Method of assaying methemoglobin on blood gas is measurement of absorption spectrum using co-oximetry. Methemoglobin has a peak absorbance at 631 nanometer. Okay. Partial pressure of arterial oxygen, also called arterial oxygen tension on the blood gas, reflects the amount of oxygen dissolved in the blood. Oxygen saturation of hemoglobin, SaO2, which is the critical parameter for tissue oxygen delivery, is calculated using PaO2 or partial pressure of arterial oxygen. This calculated oxygen saturation is falsely elevated in methemoglobinemia. If blood gas analyzer is unable to detect methemoglobin, either a pulse oximeter that can perform co-oximetry or direct assay for methemoglobin can be used. So routine pulse oximetry cannot detect methemoglobin. Routine pulse ox cannot detect methemoglobin. The reason is that methemoglobin absorbs light at pulse oximeters 2 wavelength, and this leads to error in estimating the percentage of reduced and oxyhemoglobins, and a high concentration of methemoglobin causes the oxygen saturation to display as approximately 85% regardless of the true hemoglobin oxygen saturation. The finding of SaO2 of approximately 85% and failure of SaO2 to improve with administration of supplemental oxygen are clues that may raise suspicion of methemoglobinemia. So co-oximetry or multiple wavelength oximetry. Co-oximetry, it is a specialized modification of a standard pulse oximetry in which the absorbance is measured at fixed wavelength of 630 nanometer. Most co-oximeters interpret all readings in the 630 nanometer range as methemoglobin. Thus, they may be falsely positive in presence of other hemoglobin such as sulfhemoglobin, okay, other pigments such as methylene blue, and certain drugs. Okay, so you should also consider these things. And methemoglobin can be quantified using a reaction with cyanide. Cyanide binds to positively charged methemoglobin. Cyanide binds to positively charged methemoglobin. Okay, eliminating its peak absorbance at 630 to 635 nanometer, and the subsequent addition of ferricyanide converts the entire specimen to cyanomethemoglobin for measurement of total hemoglobin concentration. This method may be especially useful if there is need to remeasure the methemoglobin level following administration of methylene blue, since co-oximeter is typically reads methylene blue as if it were methemoglobin. However, the availability of this is declining in most clinical laboratories. In those instances, methemoglobin quantification by RAD57 pulse oximeter is the preferred method for detection. If needed, testing may be sent out to special laboratories. The exact results are not required for diagnosis and treatment of methemoglobinemia. Results from blood gas measurement are generally sufficient. However, direct quantification may be helpful in selected cases. If an individual is acutely ill from methemoglobin, appropriate treatment should not be withheld while waiting the results of the test. Okay. So this we discussed how to detect methemoglobin. Okay. Now we are going to talk about acquired methemoglobinemia. Prompt clinical suspicion and evaluation is critical to identify acquired methemoglobinemia. Because the condition is rare but potentially life-threatening. In a series of 828 patients admitted to hospital with acute poisoning due to deliberate self-harm, only 7 had methemoglobinemia. Okay, so the typical presentation is of a relative abrupt development of symptoms of hypoxia upon exposure to oxidizing agent that induces methemoglobin formation. Okay, in contrast to tissue hypoxia, hypoxemia may be absent. Okay, partial pressure of oxygen in blood may be normal, so PaO2 may be normal. Okay, so hypoxemia may be absent. Hypoxemia absent. Symptoms range from mild cyanosis, dyspnea, or non-specific symptoms like headache, lightheadedness, fatigue, irritability, lethargy, to shock, respiratory distress, depression, respiratory depression, or neurologic deterioration like coma, seizures due to tissue hypoxia, which can be fatal. Typically, the severity of symptoms correlate with methemoglobin level. Okay, so like if greater than 70%, it is fatal, and if level is between 50 to 70%, then it is severe, life-threatening symptoms of hypoxemia like respiratory depression, altered sensorium, coma, shock, and seizures. And if there is level is between 20 to 50%, mild to moderate symptoms of hypoxia like lightheadedness, fatigue, tachycardia, dyspnea, and lethargy. And if it is between 3 to 20%, then it is usually asymptomatic unless pre-existing condition present. Okay, so this we discuss how the level of methemoglobin correlates with symptoms. Okay, in some cases toxicity may be exacerbated by pre-existing conditions like heart failure, anemia, lung disease, or by coexisting G6PD deficiency and ensuing hemolysis. Okay, so this camera is shaking, so I am adjusting it now, but I am not able to adjust it in quite a good way. So additional clues to diagnosis include cyanosis with pale grey or blue color skin, lips, and nail beds in the presence of normal partial pressure of oxygen. Okay, normal arterial oxygen pressure. So cyanosis with pale grey or blue colored skin, lips, and nail bed in the presence of normal arterial oxygen pressure, in the presence of normal, okay, PaO2. And symptoms of hypoxia that do not improve with administration of oxygen, and discoloration of blood like dark red, chocolate, or brownish blue that does not resolve upon oxygenation, and this may be seen in the videoscopic field during endoscopy or bronchoscopy in the collection tube or a piece of absorbent paper. Okay, so how to evaluate and diagnose? Observation of the color of blood from arterial blood or phlebotomy sample, and arterial blood gas with methemoglobin level available at virtually all institutions, but in United States. Okay, I am talking about United States, that's why I am talking it is virtually available at all institutions. It may not be available in developing or other countries. Methemoglobinemia is diagnosed if methemoglobin level is greater than 5%. Affected individuals may be symptomatic when methemoglobin comprise more than 10% of total hemoglobin. Those with anemia or lung disease may become symptomatic at lower percentage as they already have reduced oxygen delivery, and level greater than 30 to 40% are associated with severe symptoms and are considered life-threatening. So we also obtain CBC. Typically individuals with acquired methemoglobinemia have normal hemoglobin level. Okay, they do not have time to develop compensatory erythrocytosis, although they may have relative erythrocytosis if they are severely dehydrated. The peripheral blood smear is not helpful in diagnosing methemoglobinemia, although some individuals with G6PD deficiency and dapsone exposure may have Heinz bodies. Okay, carbon monoxide poisoning and sulfur-hemoglobinemia deserve a special consideration because, like methemoglobin, these are both abnormal hemoglobins that cannot be reliably detected by pulse oximetry and can be potentially life-threatening at high levels there. Okay, so we have to distinguish between other forms of hemoglobin like carboxyhemoglobin, methemoglobin, sulfur-hemoglobin. Okay, and I will discuss in another video how to distinguish between carboxyhemoglobin, methemoglobin, sulfur-hemoglobin. If I go and discussing in this, it will be long. Okay, so sulfur-hemoglobin can be distinguished from methemoglobin in a special laboratory by virtue of its peak absorption at 620 nanometer, which unlike methemoglobin is not abolished by addition of cyanide. Okay, So how do we manage? So acute toxic methemoglobinemia with methemoglobin levels above 30% or lower, if symptomatic from hypoxia, is a medical emergency with potentially life-threatening complications. And so we have to check whether there is significant symptoms. Do you understand what do you mean by significant symptoms? Like headache, lethargy, irritability, cyanosis, respiratory failure, neurological signs, changes such as seizures, coma, okay, and methemoglobin greater than 30%. If yes, then we should ask, does the individual have G6PD deficiency? G6PD deficiency. If yes, then treat with ascorbic acid. Okay. If no, if there is no G6PD deficiency, so we should ask, is the individual taking serotonergic medication or drug? Yes, then treat with ascorbic acid. Otherwise, go for treating with methylene blue. Okay. Do you understand or not? So if G6PD deficiency or taking serotonergic drug, then we go for ascorbic acid. Otherwise, methylene blue is preferred because it acts faster and it is more efficacious than ascorbic acid. Okay. Why we use ascorbic acid in G6PD deficiency, and if patient has history of taking serotonergic drugs, I will discuss it later. Okay, but at this moment just follow this algorithm that I am discussing. Okay, so now, is there any clinical improvement? So we ask, after giving this ascorbic acid and methylene blue, if there is clinical improvement, then continue monitoring and provide supportive care. And if there is no clinical improvement, then re-evaluate diagnosis and consider transfusion, exchange transfusion, or hyperbaric oxygen. Okay. So the first thing is that you have to discontinue any offending drug or medications that patient may be taking and that may be precipitating methemoglobinemia. There are a vast list of medications. I can't discuss everyone, but I can just name few like Dapsone, local anesthetics, topical sprays and creams including benzocans, in teething rings and ointments, lidocaine and prilocaine, sulfonamides, and there are other many drugs that causes methemoglobinemia. So we should discontinue those first of all and institute appropriate supportive care as needed. Okay, institute additional treatment for individuals with methemoglobin level greater than 30% or those with levels 20 to 30% who are symptomatic, especially if they have underlying cardiac or pulmonary disease. Okay, so additional treatment for individuals with methemoglobin greater than 30%